Hi, thanks for coming, and a big thank you to Allendale Columbia for facilitating this event. It's really an honor to be asked to participate. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm going to be talking today about how we use food, specifically chocolate, to build connections, but also to create differences between cultures and within communities. A little bit about vocabulary before we get started, though. I'm going to be using the words cacao and chocolate a lot today, so I want to just explain the difference. Cacao is a plant. You can see it on the left here. It's a tree native to northern South America, and we make chocolate from the seeds in these football-sized pods here. Chocolate, and you can see a sculpture that I made a few years back, highly processed product, bears about as much resemblance to cacao as wine does to grapes. So in order to explore the connecting or the dividing power of cacao and chocolate, we're going to look at two moments in time, explore how they relate to each other, and then we're going to talk about how we can use that information about how we choose to use our food. So first, we'll look at how cacao was used in Mesoamerica during European and indigenous contact in order to smooth out diplomacy, resist continued contact, and create a new culture. Then, I'll reflect on how my work as a chocolatier and the work of artisan food producers in general builds networks and creates communities. And finally, we'll see how these two elements are components of the same continuous narrative, and we'll explore the glory of liminality. A little bit of geographic context to start out with. When I say Mesoamerica, I mean a region of the world defined primarily by Mexico and Central America. The people who lived there when Europeans arrived were a diverse bunch, but were connected by, among other things, the central role that cacao and cacao beverages played in defining their worldview and religion. Cacao was a life-giving substance, food of the gods, and a necessary sacrifice to keep the world going. So a lot of the stories that we'll be touching on today come from the regions now defined by Mexico City and the Yucatan Peninsula. I want you to imagine that you are lost, preferably in the jungle. You're tired, you're hungry, you're dehydrated, you probably got some funky parasites going on too. And you meet a group of strangers with whom you can only sort of communicate through an interpreter, and they offer you a beverage. And this drink, to a typical Spaniard, could land on a 16th century edition of Fear Factor. It is thick, blood red, foamy, bitter, served in a hollowed out gourd. So you hesitate, right? But the people offering it to you taste it first to show that it's okay, and you try it, and it's not that bad. Trust takes root here because of that, and real interaction can finally begin. So this is the scene that played out when Hernan Cortez landed on the coast of Mexico in 1519. We see him here meeting Moctezuma, the Aztec emperor, with his interpreter by his side. The offering of food and drink is an act of diplomacy that transcends cultural and linguistic barriers because it speaks to that fundamental human experience of eating and drinking. Conquest and conversion, though, came hard on the heels of contact, and not everybody was interested in using chocolate to connect to your neighbor. For a lot of Spanish, chocolate was disgusting, described it as a drink for pigs. They were freaked out by its symbolic associations with blood, and they used it to transform indigenous people into savages. For those indigenous people, on the other hand, let's see, don't know where my slide went, but for those indigenous people, on the other hand, cacao is a lifeline to a pre-conquest way of life. When the Mexican Inquisition came to stamp out such idol worship, they found that cacao anchored these pre-conquest religious rituals through its continued use as a sacrifice. But cultures are permeable, and the boundaries between Spaniard and Indian were frequently blurred. So there are stories told in which Christ hides in the branches of a cacao tree. There's a monastery in Mexico with a Garden of Eden into which a cacao tree is painted. Spanish priests drank cacao before taking Mass, and there's a statue in the main cathedral in Mexico City that became known as Christ of the Cacao after its most frequent offering. So yeah, cacao could be used as a tool for resistance, but also for knitting together, for bridging old and new, known and unknown. So we're going to jump forward right now to the right here and right now. I work at Hedonist, Artisan Chocolates and Ice Cream, and it's the word artisan on which I'd like to focus. That is handmade. When we consume the work of another person's hands, we connect directly to that person in the same way that Cortez's first sips of cacao created a visceral connection between him and the people he met. So a few years back, I was participating in an archaeological excavation, and the site littered with pottery sherds, but one in particular sticks in my memory. On the outside, it patterned like fish scales, but when I flipped it over, I saw preserved in the 800-year-old clay a thumbprint. So right there, I had this connection, this visceral, tangible connection to a person who had lived centuries ago because I could see the evidence of their hands. And so the same connection occurs in handmade food where you can see the person who made it. I think it's that desire for connection that draws people to craft and handmade artisan foods, especially as we outgrow the Wonder Bread era. So my hands plug me into a network of people, a network of craftspeople whose tools are bread and wine, beer, coffee, produce, cheese, and all those products flow into one another. I use them in my work. It's a network that's not defined by likes or tweets or statuses, but it's powered by that fundamental experience of making and eating food, and by the belief that that experience should be filled with joy. So that network then that we create becomes the skeleton of community, as people like my former students here are drawn to the person-food-person connection. They want to share in that, become consumers of it, and advocates for it. So we might not offer chocolate to the gods anymore, but we do continue to offer it to each other. What connects these two episodes of chocolate history, separated as they are by 500 years and a continent? It's the liminality of chocolate, the fact that we can't make it fit quite neatly into one category or the other. And we can see this from the early days, that chocolate exists in this in-between space. Is it Indian or is it European? Pig food or a feast for the gods? Is it Christian or non? That same ambivalence continues to animate chocolate today. So take these truffles that I make. I believe that the high-end handmade chocolate that is my livelihood is a powerful force for connection and community building, but it still can have the power to divide as well. So these truffles, are they a product of the hard work and dedication of craftspeople across this region, or a marker of class divisions based on cost and palate? A sinful, perhaps hedonistic indulgence, or a health superfood, celebration of local products, or the product of a global system of resource exploitation? The answer to all of these questions, past and present, is the same. It depends. It depends on how we eat, buy, teach, and talk about our chocolate. It depends, therefore, on us. Our choices matter here because it is our choices that give chocolate, or cacao, the power to divide or connect. So that is the glory of liminality. When something doesn't fit neatly into one category or the other, one path or the other, we get to choose. So it depends on us, and it depends on you. Thank you.